Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. This is your legal BFF, Girija Patel. Thank you for tuning in. I am so grateful for every single one of you for tuning in and listening, because this is what Law Chat is about. It's a place for you to be inspired, a place for you to gain some more wisdom and knowledge about your industry, but a place also where you can receive mentorship through storytelling. Thank you so much. Now, I know that before we walk into this next episode, whether you're tuning in through your iTunes or through other form of a podcast, or whether this is on YouTube, I would love for you to share this information with someone else, somebody who is your friend, your family, a colleague, somebody in your community, someone who can really be inspired by this as well and benefit from the information and from the stories that we're sharing with you today. Law Chat is to help the community, is to boost the community, is to inspire the community. And I want you to help me to do that. So thank you so much for that. Let's get started. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. We coach leaders. As a business owner, you are the leader of your ship. You are the person guiding your business. But a lot of times we are guiding, but then sometimes we just need to be guided also. We need that course to be told to us or help us to navigate it. And our guest today, Kim Ades, is an author, speaker, entrepreneur, coach, a mom of 5. Kim's claim to fame is teaching her powerful coaching process to leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs worldwide. She's the founder of Frame of Mind Coaching for executives and the Journal That Talks Back, which is an unlimited, accessible coaching and journaling app for young professionals. I think that is so cool. I'm really glad to have her on Law Chat today. I can absolutely use a dose of her wisdom. I know you all can use a dose of her wisdom. So welcome to Law Chat, Kim. Thank you for being with us today.
I am so thrilled to be here. I can't wait for this conversation. I am ready to go.
I love that. So, Kim, like we were talking before we started, I love to talk a little bit about the journey, like where we got here, because a lot of times we see the full package and not what all it took to get there. So, tell me a little bit, how did you get into coaching? What did the road look like to you?
Yeah. So, I would call myself a serial entrepreneur. And so before, like years ago, many years ago, because I've been doing this for 18 years. So imagine 18 years plus, call it 11 or 12 years before that, I owned another company. And we used to build simulation-based assessments. And the purpose of those assessments was to help companies make better hiring decisions. And so I'm an entrepreneur who loves the study of human nature. I've been kind of focusing in on leaders for the bulk of my life, but that's what I've been after. So I ran this company where one of the things we did was we were assessing for who is a high performer and how would we know? What are the skill sets, the attitudes, the personality traits of top performers? And I ran that company for 10 years and then I sold it. And after I sold it, I was kind of like, what do I do now? And I got hired by a coaching company here in Toronto. And I was excited to work for them because their mandate, their mission statement was to help people live extraordinary lives. And I thought, that's definitely for me. That's so aligned with my heart, right, what I want to be doing in life. So I thought, this is going to be a good match. But I lasted maybe 9 months. And the reason that was such a short stint in my life is because, number one, I don't think that I am actually employable. Some people aren't designed to be employees. I think I'm one of those people. But the second thing is that I got to observe how they coach. And I thought to myself, I think they're doing it wrong. I think there's a better way to coach people. I think they're missing the boat. I think they're missing the whole purpose, the whole issue at hand. And I think I could do a better job. And that's when I left and started my own coaching company.
Oh, gosh.
But that's the journey in a nutshell.
Yeah. I'm going to rewind a little bit and talk about your first business that you had. I know sometimes we start businesses and we expect them to be so successful, and then closing the doors is a hard decision. What were some of the emotions that you might have gone through at that time, and how did you feel?
Yeah. So I didn't close the doors. What ended up happening was, and I'll get very vulnerable and expose everything. I had 2 partners at the time. One of them is now my ex-husband. So when our marriage kind of fell apart,
Mm-hmm.
the partnership was hard to maintain. So
Right.
I ended up selling my component, my part of the business to him. And
Uh,
then I left and I had to figure out my own path. Like, what do I do now? What's my next step? And it was
yeah.
very hard for me because the business was my concept. It was my idea. It was I thought of it as my baby. And I was the face and the voice of the business.
Yeah.
And so anybody who thought of the business associated it with me. And suddenly, we were divorced. So not only was I split up from my husband, but I was split up from this company that I felt was very much a part of my identity. And
Right.
so, it didn't take me long to now get this other job, right? Like they knew about me because I did a lot of speaking. I was very prominent in the industry. So I
Mm-hmm.
got snatched up very quickly. But I thought I had found a new home, but it wasn't really a good home for me.
Right. But it was transitionary and it helped you also figure out what you needed to do in the next chapter and phase of your life.
Exactly. But to
Yeah.
go back to the emotions, I mean, when you suddenly let go of something that you're so tied to from an
Mm-hmm.
identity standpoint, it's
Mm-hmm.
very disorienting. Like you just kind of go like, who am I now? And for me, there were layers to it because I was married and I had this business and my whole life was attached to both of those things. And suddenly neither of those things were there. And I found myself like a single mom and I was married very young, so I didn't have a whole lot of dating experience. And
Yeah.
so, like, everything kind of really turned on its head, and I had to decide where do I want to go next.
Gosh, that's a lot to handle at one given time.
Yeah,
And I agree with you. Divorce in a marriage is, and then when you leave a company, it's also somewhat like divorcing a company, especially when it's a partnership. And,
especially when it's yours
and
and it's
yeah,
your
exactly.
brainchild. Yeah.
Yeah. And that must have been a really, really hard decision and move at the time. And I'm going to kind of get a little bit deeper into that because I know there's many others that are facing similar situations or those crossroads. So, how did you navigate yourself out of there? And what would be maybe some words of advice for somebody else who might be in that similar situation today?
you know, one of the things I did, one of the things that was important to me, and I'm not sure that I succeeded 100% of the time, but one of the things that was super important to me is to go through the process of divorce, separation, business separation, etc., with as much grace and kind of self dignity as I could have.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you're feeling so terrible about everything, you don't always feel graceful. You
Yeah.
don't always behave in the most graceful manner, but that was my goal. That was my purpose. And so I knew that one of the most important things for me is to like try to keep my emotional state at a high place, like try
Mm-hmm.
to like manage myself, try to continue to just feel okay, right? Because I wasn't feeling okay. I felt terrible. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things I did was I journaled a lot. I journaled a lot. And I journaled in a way where I used my journal to bring me to a better place. I call it dump, dump, and then dump the dump. So I would write everything I was feeling. And some of those feelings were really not nice, were really hard, were really ugly, were really painful emotions. But then I would take that and I would say, okay, well, this is not where I want to be. This is not where I want to stay. This is not how I want to feel. Where do I want to go? How do I want to feel? What do I want to look forward to? What do I want to do with this emotion? How do I want to transfer it to something else? And I would
Mm-hmm.
use my journal to literally take myself to a new emotional place where I felt a little more optimistic, a little more hopeful, a little better about myself. Right. And so that was a huge, huge part of my healing process.
Wow.
Massive.
Yeah. Journaling is so powerful. I absolutely 100% agree with that. And thank you so much for sharing that also, because this is not ever an easy conversation at any given point in time.
It's not easy, but for me, it was a long time ago. So it's not that hard anymore.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And there is, again, like your story yourself, there is always another season in life, another season that will come. And your season came through that one, working. And then after that, you're like, no, no, this is not how it's done. And then you started your own business at that time.
Right.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. YourContractBuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now, back to our awesome conversation.
Right. So when that transition from working to starting a business, it was, again, you said 9 months you were only working with them?
At best. Yes.
So was that decision to shift to your own business easy or
Very
easier?
easy.
Like
it was
mind?
like, I can't explain the relief I felt.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the room with the man at the time who was my boss, and he's like, so, what do you think we should do? And I said, I think we should call it a day. And he said, I agree. And like the relief that came to me in that conversation was like, wow, the weight of the world was lifted from my shoulders. I'm free again to go do what I want, when I want, how I want. And that's really my goal in life.
So tell me about your unique philosophy. I know when you describe yourself or the business that you have right now in your coaching, it's unique philosophy and quirky style. So what is that? What does that mean?
So let me go back and kind of describe a little bit about what I experienced working in this company, what I witnessed, and why I thought it wasn't the right way to go. And then I'll take you to where I am now.
Love it.
So at the time, I wasn't really exposed to coaching. It was new for me. So I was there to learn. And what I observed was that they were coaching business owners. And what they would do is they would say, okay, business owner, let's create a business plan and let's put all these milestones in the business plan. And the coach's job was to hold the business owner accountable for all the parts on the journey until they reach their goals. Mm-hmm. Sounds perfectly reasonable, right?
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, like, what's this all about, actually? Why do we need to hold somebody else accountable? Like, why can't they just do what's on the plan? I mean, I know how to write a plan and we all know how to create a plan, but why don't people do what's on the plan? What stops them from doing what's on the plan? What's actually getting in the way? What's requiring them to get some stranger to hold them accountable? And I thought to myself, you know what? Like, I don't want to be holding people accountable. I have kids, and I don't want to have to report to somebody. Like, that structure doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I thought, what if we could really understand what stops people from doing the things that they need to do? What stops them from doing the things that will help them reach their goals? What's the actual issue here?
Mm-hmm.
But if I could get inside their heads and understand how they think, how they see the world, how they feel about themselves, how they interpret events that are going on, how they process their experiences, then I could understand what's actually stopping them from moving forward. And so given the fact that I was journaling all day, every day, or a lot, journaling a lot, I thought, what if I could read somebody else's journals?
Yeah.
What if I could see what they're telling themselves? That would be pretty powerful, right?
Yeah.
That would equip me to be a very, very effective coach. And so when I started coaching, I said, you know what? I'm going to ask my clients to journal in a journal, an online journal. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't have a special software or anything like that. I used Blogger, the blogging software. I'm like, you can just journal there. I didn't realize it was a terrible idea, but it served the purpose at the time.
Yeah.
So I would give them a journaling question and they would start journaling. And every time they journaled, I would read and respond to their journal. But let me go back, because I never coached anybody a day in my life at the time. I didn't go to coaching school. I just thought, I'll be a good coach, right? But I was terrified. And so I thought, what am I going to talk to somebody about for a whole hour? How is that going to work? So I decided, you know what? I'll coach a group of people. If I coach a group of people and everybody talks for 5 or 10 minutes, the hour will pass, right? That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I started off with group coaching, and the purpose was to help me deal with my own fears.
Mm.
What I discovered very quickly was that people had a lot to say, and passing an hour was not a problem. But I discovered more than that was that this journaling concept was way, way, way more powerful than I imagined, than I understood.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, we've only been working with that more and more and more and more. But in terms of my quirky coaching style, I use strange analogies. I definitely use my own life experiences, but I see the world a little bit differently. I'll give you an example. Okay. So everybody wants work-life balance, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that everybody wants. And I use this example. Like, you ever go to a park and you see two kids on a seesaw? You ever see that?
Yeah.
What happens when they're in perfect balance? Perfect balance.
They're just hanging right there.
Nothing's
Yeah,
happening.
they're just there.
There's no action. There's no movement. And so
Mm.
do you want a life like that?
I
Not
love that
so much, right?
analogy. Yeah.
Not so much. What you're looking for is the ride. But what you're really looking for is the ability to enjoy the ride,
Mm-hmm.
not being on the ride and feeling stressed, not being on the ride and it's hurting you because the bumps hurt when you're on the way down, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you want is to have a thrill, to really, really enjoy the ride. You don't want no ride. You don't want to be still your whole life. You want moments of stillness, but you don't want a life of stillness.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of balance is really misunderstood and
Yeah.
overrated. That's not what we're after. What we're really after is a certain mindset or a certain level of emotional resilience that allows us to handle the ups and downs of the rides that we're on.
Mm.
So that's what we're after.
Yeah.
But if I don't give you that analogy, because it's a little bit weird, right? It's a little quirky. You're like, no, I want balance. And suddenly, when I help you understand this, you're like, yeah, maybe not so much. Right?
I love that analogy. It's actually, I also don't believe that the word balance is the appropriate word either. You know, there's this talk about integration now, like having an integrated lifestyle where, because there are certain things that will be taking priority at a certain given point in time. And it's okay. And you have to be okay with it. But I love that your focus is not just on that, but on the enjoying the journey, enjoying that aspect. So how do you help your clients understand that or figure out how to enjoy?
Well, one of the things that we do is when we work with clients, we ask them to journal every single day. And what we do is we read and respond to their journals. But in their journals comes forth, right? When you read somebody's journals every single day, you start to notice patterns,
Mm,
patterns of thought, their beliefs, their behaviors. You start to notice how they operate, how they're wired, what matters to them, what bothers them, how they're triggered, how they're thriving sometimes. And so that information is really very, very critical to us. And it helps us to understand what they're after. What are your goals? What is it that you want? And some people forget what they want. And what we do is we remind them or we help them get clear about what it is they want and where they're going. What are their goals? What is the direction they're heading in? And we start to show them how some of their thinking and some of their behaviors clash with their goals.
mm,
Right? So I'll give you a perfect example. I was working with a client several years ago. He owned an accounting firm. And I asked him a question. The question was, like, what's your priority? What's the most important thing in your life? He said, there's no question. Hands down, it's my relationship with my wife. It's the single most important relationship, and it's the single most important thing in my life. It's more important than my work. It's more important than my friends. It's even more important than my children. It's very important that we're aligned, that we're on the same page, that we're rowing in the same direction, that we spend close, intimate time together, and we're working together. We're on the same team. Well, a few weeks later, he was journaling in his journal, and he said, I just got into a massive fight with my wife. Well, what happened? He said, well, one of my kids wanted to go to an all-night party, and I said no, and she said yes. And I got really, really mad. I got so mad that I slept in the other room. Now think about it. Does sleeping in the other room achieve his primary goal?
mm.
Does that achieve intimacy and closeness with your wife? It
No,
doesn't. It doesn't. But
no.
he got so upset, so righteous, so had such a need to be right
Mm-hmm.
that he abandoned his goal. He abandoned his primary purpose. And we do that all the time. We abandon the things that are most important to us because our brains get cloudy.
Oh my goodness. You're so right. Like if we, I mean, I'm like now like going scrolling through my brain of like all the past, and you're right, you know, and if we realign with our major goals, sometimes the ego won't come in the way then.
Exactly. So what we do is we get to a place where we understand people's real desires. And you know what? I do a lot of presentations and I ask people, what is it that you really want? What do you really truly desire? Not what you should want, what you think you want, but what do you really, really want? A lot of people have no idea. They have no clue what they really want. And so when we get to that, when we get to some level of clarity, now we're working on, hey, is your thinking, are your beliefs, are they aligned with your goals? And oftentimes we see that no.
Yeah.
Right. And if your goals, if your beliefs and your thinking isn't aligned with your goals, it's impossible to reach your goals. Impossible.
Yeah. So if, you know, for the listeners right now, if you were to just give them an exercise just to kind of start figuring out their goals and then journaling to see if there is alignment there, what would that exercise be?
Okay, great. Perfect. So whoever's listening, grab a piece of paper and a pen and literally write down these 2 journaling questions. So question number 1, what do I really, really, really want more than anything? And you'll notice there are a lot of reallys there because I want you to think about what you truly deeply want, not what someone wants for you, not what you expect or someone expects for you, not what you think you should want, but what do you truly deeply want? And then question number 2 is, so what's stopping you from having that right now? What's getting in your way? And just write all the reasons you can't have what you want. So, you know, I work with business owners and some people say, well, I don't have enough money. And some people say, I don't have enough time. Some people say I have not enough support. Some people say I have not enough experience or I don't have the education. Write down all the reasons you don't currently have what you want. And I will say to you that all those reasons are a function of your beliefs. And those beliefs are clashing with your desires.
Yes.
And then can I throw one more thing in?
Absolutely.
If you're really, really courageous, and the reason I offer this is because I know that very few people take me up on this offer, send me your responses to those 2 journaling questions. And I will personally respond.
I love that. Where would they send it to?
So send it to Kim at frameofmindcoaching.com.
Okay, we'll put that into the show notes as well. And then, Kim, another question I have is journaling. People hear about it all the time and they're thinking, oh, you know, we're just writing our thoughts or affirmations. But what is journaling? What is the right way of doing it? Or is there a right way of doing it? Like, how do you even start?
Let's talk about affirmations and then we'll talk about journaling. Okay.
Yeah.
So I am not a fan of affirmations. Why? See, another quirky thing, right? Everything, people are going this way and I'm like over there, right? So why am I not a fan of affirmations? Because typically affirmations force you to think about yourself in a way that clashes with your fundamental beliefs. So if I say to myself, I look in the mirror, I'm like, wow, I'm beautiful. I'm stunning. I'm a model. But in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, who are you kidding? The back of my head wins. And what happens is I create a greater cognitive dissonance for myself. And that makes it harder for me to get to where I want to go. So this concept of affirmations often tries to stretch us way further than we are right now. And because we have disbelief, we create internal conflict for ourselves. And so I'm not interested in affirmations. I'm interested in what we call trading up. So I might look in the mirror and instead of saying, wow, I'm beautiful, I'm awesome, I'm like a model, I might say, I look pretty good for my age. And I might believe that. And if I believe that, I feel good. If I don't believe that, I create an internal war. Right. So I want to go from I look pretty good for my age to I'm pretty attractive. Right. And so what I'm doing is I'm trading up one better belief for the next. but I'm not going from, like I'm a 53-year-old like mom of, young adults to I'm a beauty queen, right? Like I'm not doing that because my brain doesn't buy it. And if my
Right.
brain doesn't buy it, then that affirmation doesn't work. It actually backfires on me.
Right.
And I think that there's so much confusion about affirmations that they're not useful.
Mm.
So now, is there a right way to journal? The right way to journal is to journal. The right way to journal is to do it. Okay. So number one is there are a million ways to journal. You can write a list every day. That's journaling. You could write what your plans are for the day. That's journaling. You could write about a terrible experience you just had and how you're feeling about it. That's journaling. You could write about all your plans for the future. You could write about your ideal man or relationship. You could write about, the interaction you had with the most cool person you've ever met. Right? There are a million ways to journal. The key about journaling, right? The key about journaling is like, if you're just going to use it in a really strategic way, is to understand that that journaling has a purpose. The purpose of the journal is to use it to manage your emotional state, to bring yourself to a better place. Right? So when you're upset, journal, write it down, get it all out, but then move yourself to a better place. Use it to dream an amazing dream. That process brings you to a better emotional place.
Right. And it's also because you're not bottling it inside. You're taking it outside of you.
Yes.
You're allowing yourself to release those emotions.
Exactly. Exactly. Is it okay for you to feel a negative emotion? Of course it is. We're humans. We must. But it's important for us not to stay there permanently.
Yeah.
Right?
I always say that let's not pitch a tent and build a house. That's not what feel the emotions, but don't pitch a tent and build a house.
Exactly. So your journaling allows you to experience the emotions and take yourself to the place you want to go. Journaling allows you to remind yourself what it is that you want. But the real magic in journaling is when you look back on your journal. Go back and read your journal. So many people never read their journals and say, what do I see here? What are the patterns? What are the wins? When did I feel good? When do I feel bad all the time? What am I seeing in this journal? This journal gives me, it's leaving me clues. What clues do I get from this journal? Right? Now, the real super magic, incredible thing that happens is when you're journaling and a coach is reading your journal, because your coach who's trained has the ability to very quickly pick out to see what you can't see.
Right.
That's when you're, speeding forward.
Wow. I feel like your coaching technique is so different from, and quite honestly, like anything that I have heard before. I have coaches in my life. Coaches are amazing. You just have to make sure you're picking the right coach for you. But your technique is really cool because you're really getting insight. A lot of times people might be afraid to verbally say something, but writing it is almost like putting in an email and you feel like you're behind the screen and you can share those emotions. Now, tell me, I'm assuming this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like journaling and emotional resilience are connected. And I know that is something that you teach, you coach on as well. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about what emotional resilience is and how do we achieve it? What do we do to get to it?
Yeah, good. So what is emotional resilience? Emotional resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity with speed and agility. But those people who are super performers or super people who live extraordinary lives, they don't only bounce back, they leverage the adversity somehow. So they take the experience and they turn it into like a strategic kind of like a treasure for them, right? A key success factor. So they take their negative experience and they turn it into an advantage somehow. So in my case, like I went through a really hard time. And what did I do? I journaled.
Yeah.
Right. And what I did was I gained experience. I built my experience, my resilience through that process. But now journaling is like the centerpiece of my whole entire business. Right. So I leveraged the negative experience I had.
Right.
And to be honest, like when you have negative experiences, from my standpoint, it makes me a much more compassionate, insightful coach, right? If I lived on a perch where everything went perfectly, I wouldn't really be able to relate to people all that well.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And so emotional resilience, how can one attempt to achieve it? Like what are there daily practices
So
or
it's not about daily practice. It's about, so where does resilience fail, or where do people have a weakness in resilience? So we have experiences and people tell stories about those experiences. The stories we tell about those experiences will determine our level of emotional resilience.
Mhm.
So when we look back and say, oh my God, that was terrible, horrible, awful, the worst thing in the world, it's still sitting with me, I'm still struggling with it, et cetera, we're not emotionally resilient. We
No.
haven't moved past it. When we look back and we say, yeah, that was a terrible time, but it led me to here. But here's what I learned. But here's what I took from it. And when I look back, it was terrible in the moment, but it's still not terrible anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So the stories we tell about the experiences we've had will determine our level of emotional resilience. Now, we need to learn how to tell the stories about our past. And a lot of people struggle. So, like, just before I spoke to you, I had a call with a woman who had a divorce in 2005. How many years ago was that? Almost 20, right? Like 17 years ago or so. It's a long time. And she's still embroiled in that past relationship, still suffering, struggling, in pain from the toxicity of that relationship. 17 years later. So you go through a marriage of, let's call it a 12-year marriage, but it's not over when it's over because emotionally we drag it on.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh.
So
Yeah.
a highly emotionally resilient person will say, okay, that happened.
Yeah.
I'm creating meaning. I'm creating purpose out of that experience. And I'm running forward. I'm not staying in that moment. I'm not extending the pain and the agony.
Right. Right. Feeling the emotions, like you said before, it's a good thing to do. It's normal. And for you, it's also putting it into a journal, writing about it so you can experience it, but you can also let it go in some aspect. Again, hanging out there for years. You're right. 17 years is a lot of time. And I feel also sometimes it's a difference in personality. Like I am eternally optimistic. Like you could throw anything at me and I'll still find some optimism coming out of there, to the point where my kids are like, they're like, oh my gosh, please stop. And so, but I'm like, whatever, like I want to teach you to be optimistic. Don't let the punches throw you down. But for those who are not like that, because they're just wired differently, how do they get out of that rut of being pessimistic, or just that 17-year, feelings that they're harboring still?
Yeah, there's a learning involved in going back to history and telling the story in a new way and doing it over and over and over again until there's a new way of telling that story. Right. And so what we learn, the lesson learned is the stories we tell will determine the life we live. And so what story do you want to be telling? Is that the story you want to be telling over and over and over again? Or can we tell a new story?
Yeah.
Like, you're in control of this. There are lots of things you're not in control of, but you're in control of this. And so we need to decide how to manage that. We need to take control, right? So many of us suffer because we feel like we have no control. We have no power. We're powerless. We have no idea the powers we do have, and we don't take ownership of those powers. And that's my job, is to help people understand their power.
Yeah.
And let go of the things they are trying out there to control that is not theirs to control.
Gosh, I journal, but if you don't journal, I feel like this conversation would absolutely make you want to journal, because I think one of my biggest takeaways from just having this conversation with you today is journaling and then writing down the things that are actually causing conflict, but then seeing how they're not aligned with your goals and your purposes, and then not doing the things that are not aligned with the goals that you have. And that example that you gave earlier was so great about the husband.
I'll give you another example. I'll give you another example. So when we coach our leaders or our executives, we take them through a 10-week coaching cycle, right? And every week we give them a new journaling exercise or a journaling prompt. Well, around week 8, we give them a very particular journaling prompt. And that is that they can pick anyone they want. They can pick someone dead, someone alive, someone famous, someone from their past. It doesn't really matter who they pick. They must pick someone and have an ideal conversation with that person. And literally, they're writing a script, right? Like a play. They talk, the person talks. They talk, the person talks. And they're creating this script. So a bunch of years ago, I was coaching this person. She was a VP in a company. She was responsible for sales in a digital marketing company way back when digital marketing was still fairly new.
Yeah.
And she decided that she would write an ideal conversation between herself and the Obama administration because she decided that she wanted to become Secretary of State. Cool, right? And she decided that in this conversation, she was going to script out the interview. So they brought her in for the interview. They said, we read your resume. It looks very impressive, but tell us in your own words, what qualifies you for this position? And she wrote like paragraphs about her qualifications. She wrote about her background, how her parents came from Japan. They came to the United States. They started a business. They're contributing to the US economy. She talked about her own personality, her own education. She took economics and how that would be useful in this position. She talked about her 10-point plan that she would implement as Secretary of State and so on and so forth. And they said, wow, like that is so impressive. Like you're an amazing candidate. You're by far our leading candidate. And as soon as we've interviewed all the candidates, we'll get back to you. And at the bottom of her journal, she wrote me a note, me, the coach, right? She said, how's that for dreaming big? What do you think? Do you think that's dreaming big?
I love it.
It's dreaming big?
That is dreaming big.
Except that she didn't give herself the job. So I gave her a blank slate to create an ideal conversation. And what did she create? She created a situation where she had to prove her worth.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, that way. Yeah.
Right. So for me, an ideal conversation in the same context would be they call me up. They say, Kim, we've interviewed all the candidates. There's no question. You're the best one for the role and we want you to start. But before you do, we're sending you and 6 of your best friends on an all-inclusive paid trip to Italy. Right? That's an ideal conversation. But what we saw is that even when people create ideal conversations, they create limitations in those conversations that are reflective of their beliefs about their values, their worth, right? In the journal, we can see it.
Wow.
Why would you set up a situation where you're not even getting the job, where they still have to interview all the other candidates before they give you a green light?
Yeah.
Why would you create that? If you could create anything at all, why create a wait and see situation?
Right.
The reason is because she didn't believe that she would actually get the job, that she didn't believe that she was worth it, that they would see her value. And that permeated everywhere else. It showed up in her sales. It showed up in her job. Right? So what people are writing in their journals is so telling, is so indicative of what's going on. Gives us the whole story about your beliefs. And your beliefs really lead your life. They guide your life. They drive your actions and your inactions, and they determine what you achieve.
So for someone like that, what would be the next advice or step for them to get them out of that disbelief, like to get them out of what they believe is their value or worth?
Yeah. So half the job is helping people see what they don't see. Right? Like half the job is bringing awareness to the fact that, hey, this is how you're operating. Here's how you see yourself. Here's what you are doing. You're spending so much time. And in her case, literally, she would spend so much time with sales prospects, giving them all the data and all the proof and the presentations and everything. She was never asking for the sale, never closing the deal. And so the task was to have the conversation to say, okay, so like, how do we close the deal? How do we do some of that? Not so much of that. How do we do some of that so that you're comfortable? But now how do we move your efforts towards closing the deal? Like, what's the thinking that is required for you to be ready to say, can I have your business? Right? And so that's the work that needed to be done in her case.
Wow. I feel like a lot of us go through that in different manners. We all experience that, whether it's, I mean, just even for me, just sometimes even pricing, asking for the money, or, saying, hey, no, this is how much it is, and not being scared about it.
Yeah,
And because the work you're putting behind it, the quality that you're putting behind it as well.
exactly.
And just speaking about yourself in a way that you're not feeling too shy or too timid, because you have achieved, you have done things.
Yeah.
So, goodness, that's such great stuff. Like everything that you have shared has been in so much abundance also. And I appreciate that. I really appreciate the wisdom that you've shared and the experiences as well, because I think those are how we can relate with the examples that you've shared with us today.
Yeah. And we all come to the table with an underlying, like this blind spot. Every single one of us, even me, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have something we don't see. And that's something that we don't see messes us up sometimes. It
Yeah.
gets in our way. It trips us up. It makes things harder than they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
It makes things harder for us to reach our goals and achieve the life we want to live.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly, truly, truly. You had such, like, honestly amazing things to share with us today. And for the listeners out there that want to connect with you, that want to hear more from you, how can they reach out to you?
So I'm going to talk about two things, if that's okay. So
Absolutely.
we coach executives, we coach leaders, we coach C-suite, we coach movers and shakers, we coach all of those people. And for those of you who are in that category, come and learn more about us at frameofmindcoaching.com. And again, my email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. But not that long ago, we sort of started to discover that some people weren't executives and leaders and in that category, and some people still needed coaching. And so we created another opportunity for people to get coached at a much more affordable rate in another way, in another manner. And what we did was we created a coaching service that is based on journaling. So
Mm-hmm.
people come to the site, they get assigned to a real live human being, a real coach, and they get to journal as much as they want with their coach, who will read and respond to their journal every time they journal. So daily if they want.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. And that is called the Journal That Talks Back. And I
Wow.
encourage you to go and check that out too. Again, it's the Journal That Talks Back. So we're everywhere. Find us, look for us,
Yeah. Oh
do your
gosh.
homework. Yeah.
That is absolutely something I'm going to be dabbling into as well. And everything's going to be in the show notes so they can, reach out to you
Yeah.
and get the resources and the links that you are providing with us today. But before everybody leaves, or, they say their final goodbyes with me, I always like to ask two questions. Number one, what is your anchor? What holds you steady?
Probably my husband. My husband. He's a very, very steady guy. In
Yeah.
fact, that's a bit funny. He's very steady, and I'm very like, yeah. And so we have that interesting relationship where he is the anchor, no question, no
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
I love that. And then what are some books you're reading, or if you watch Netflix or something of that nature?
Right now, I'm reading the book called Son of a Witch, which is. Have you ever heard of the book or the play Wicked?
Yes.
So it's the what happens after Wicked, and it's the son. It's the story is the son of Elphaba.
No way. I didn't
Yeah,
even know that was a book.
I didn't either. So
Okay.
that's what I'm reading right now. And as far as Netflix goes, oh my gosh,
What's on
um,
your watch list?
what's on my watch list? I love the Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Yeah, that's
I
a good one.
love The Great. Have you heard of the Great?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so not clean and pure, but it's awesome. I love Ted Lasso.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we watch American Idol, America's Got Talent,
Yeah.
those kinds of
That, and
things.
like, okay, she watches on Prime, she watches on Apple Plus, she
Have
watches
you
on
have you seen
Hulu.
the Kaminsky method?
No, what is
That's a
that?
good one. That's a good one.
Where do you
It's with
find
Mike.
that?
It's with Mike Douglas. I have no idea. Mike Douglas and I forget the other guy's name, but awesome. Lots of fun too to watch.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we all need some downtime. So whatever that
What do
looks
you
like
watch?
for you.
What are you
Oh
watching?
my goodness. Gosh, right now I am watching, I just finished Indian Matchmaker, which is
Oh, yes, I heard it's amazing.
total reality trash, but feel guilty pleasure type stuff. It is good
Uh,
stuff. And then my husband and I love watching Marvel comic stuff. So on Disney
yeah,
Plus, we started the She-Hulk. I'm on the fence on that one right now. I don't know if I'm feeling it.
yeah,
And then the new Lord of the Rings that's showed up on Prime. I think it's Ring of Power, whatever it's called. Anyway, so we just started that as well. And then
amazing.
I love my Korean dramas. I'm totally going to put that in here. Absolutely love my Korean dramas.
You know what's a very good sitcom?
Which one?
Bob Hart's Abby Shola.
What is Bob Hart? Like,
Hearts, like the big heart.
okay.
Bob Hearts,
Oh,
literally
Bob Hart.
hearts.
Yeah.
Abby Shola.
What is that? Where, like,
So
what?
it's a story of a woman who's a nurse and she's from Nigeria. And this guy comes in with a heart attack. And
Oh,
he's like as white American as you could find it. He like owns a company, they make socks. Okay. And they fall in love. And they're two completely different cultures.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny. It's apparently very true to the Nigerian culture.
Mhm.
It's like a laugh out loud kind of.
Wow. Do you know where you can watch
It's
that?
on TV. It's just regular TV.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wonder if it's showing in the States then.
It's worth going back and watching.
Okay, I'll look
Yeah, it's
for it.
definitely showing in the States.
Okay, I'll look for it then.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing all that. I
Yeah, no
absolutely use
problem.
downtime as my TV time or book time, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us on Law Chat, Kim. I really appreciate all the nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us today.
It was an absolute pleasure. I'm thrilled that we had this conversation. Happy to talk anytime.
Love it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Law Chat. I hope this was super beneficial to you. I really enjoyed sharing this information with you today. And I have to ask you for a favor. Like I did in the beginning, I'm going to ask you again. Please share this with your community, whether it's a friend, family, or another colleague, or someone else on your Facebook or Instagram or other social media spot. Share this, subscribe, and stay tuned for other episodes coming in so you are always up to date. But then also take another moment and share this episode with your community, because when you share it with everybody else, not only are they benefiting, but also the information that I'm sharing is reaching out to more people, because at the end of the day, we want to rise together with our community, and I can only do that with your help. Now, I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you tuned in, and I want to hear from you as well. So shoot me a DM on Instagram at GBP Law or at Law Chat with Girija. I would love to hear from you. I would love to also hear what other episodes that you would like to hear about, topics that you want to hear about, and also just connect with you. And thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, cheers.